Prime Minister, back in November 2001, you said that the Taliban was in a state of total collapse. What's happened? It seems to have had a comeback, a revival, to be a serious enemy again. What's happened? Did we underestimate them or?
No, but I think really what's happened is that although in many parts of Afghanistan they've been beaten back, in the south, in a sense, you know, they have never really left. Up in Kabul, it's been a different picture. But again, what it indicates is that they are very serious about trying to take us on, trying to take on the Afghan people who obviously want to elect their government, as they've been able to do for the first time. And again, the answer is to stick with it and make sure that we help those people who want to get a better future, where they're not prey to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and their country's turned into a training camp or a narcotics economy, or girls aren't allowed to go to school, or any of the rest of the extremism that comes with them.
Originally, one of our reasons for being in Afghanistan was hopefully to hunt and find Osama bin Laden. Have we made any progress on that?
I think we're still in the same position. But you know, this is now a worldwide movement and ideology. And the real issue for us as Western nations, because we can't, in the end, solve this. This is about empowering, as I say, the moderate elements within what is the peaceful and dignified religion of Islam to take on and defeat these extremists who warp and pervert its name. And if you look back over the past few years, the majority of the victims of terrorism have been Muslim. And many of the people who have perished in some of the worst terrorist atrocities have been Muslim people, ordinary innocent Muslim people. And this extremism that has taken root has grown over a long period of time, and it won't be defeated in a quick period of time. And I think if there's anything that we underestimated at the time of September the 11th, is that because September the 11th was the first time it shattered our own consciousness and broke in upon it, I think we tended to think, well, maybe this just began, you know, a short time before it. This has been growing a long time. And what we've got to do, as I say, in every single area, but particularly in the Middle East, is get behind the change makers in the region, the people who want to create a different type of future for people, who want prosperity and economic development and a move towards democracy.
And in fact, just mentioning Osama bin Laden there also reminds one of the other giant villain who's been found guilty, who was captured and found guilty, Saddam Hussein. Would you in fact prefer a living Saddam Hussein who might be a rallying cry for future supporters, or a dead Saddam who might become a martyr?
Look, we've got a position as a government and as an individual against the death penalty, and that applies in no matter what circumstances. But this is a decision the Iraqis have got to take. And I think this has moved beyond Saddam as a figurehead or not. The truth is, in the end, there's something far more fundamental at stake here, which is, can Iraq become a democracy in which people of different parts of the Muslim faith live together freely? And that is the only way people are going to make progress in Iraq. That is what the majority of people want. The question is, how do we help them get there? And, you know, I think we've got to send a very clear message across the whole of the Middle East that, one, there is a strategy that we have for the whole of the region in which we want to work in partnership with moderate elements. And secondly, that we are going to stick with it and make sure that for the foreseeable future, insofar as we can help this situation, we should be there and help it.
Darfur, Prime Minister, there's been some action this week on Darfur. People have been saying that really China was the most important power around Darfur. But do you think there's any hope of real progress now? I
think there's hope of progress, and Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has done a good job. But I mean, the basic thing is to get this Africa Union United Nations force into Darfur to keep aside those who are engaged in violence there, and then to get a proper peace process underway. Otherwise, we end up with a situation where, again, you know, hundreds of thousands of people die or are displaced, extremism grows, and yet another conflict can become something upon which these extreme elements gain traction, and that's what we've got to stop. And what is interesting now is right across Africa, the more extreme elements are trying to gain a foothold in order to create conflict and division and sectarianism.
And the war on terror, I mean, will last a generation. Do you think we'll still have troops in this part of the world in a generation?
It's not going to be the same as it is now at all. And no, I think there will be a situation in Iraq, particularly where the Iraqi government wants as quickly as possible to take responsibility for its own security. But on the other hand, I think in terms of our partnership, our help with economic development, our support for diplomatic efforts, for example, to bring peace in Israel-Palestine, to make sure that Lebanon is properly secured, to give a different future for the region, I think that is a partnership that needs to last a generation, yes, because I think it will take that long.
It's clear how passionate you've always been clear how passionate you are about foreign affairs and so on. If the next Prime Minister was, say, Gordon Brown, and if he was to ask you if you would continue to serve as Foreign Secretary because you're so good at it, what would you say?
No, I think when you step down as Prime Minister, you step down, and it's part of modern politics is foreign affairs is no longer almost like foreign affairs. I mean, we are affected in Britain today by an extremism that didn't begin in this country, has come in from outside, and its solution is found outside. And so, in a strange way, what I've seen in my 10 years as Prime Minister is a situation in which you've moved from domestic affairs and foreign affairs being kind of in two different compartments to one in which really the domestic and the foreign intermingle.
Absolutely. What about when you step down? What about Shereed? Would she be tempted to do a Hillary Clinton, do you think?
No. I mean, that's a question for her, but I think no. No, it's been a tremendous privilege and honour to do the job here. But I think, you know, when you move on, you move on. I think, however, there's and I've learned it's not very sensible for me to talk about what I may or may not do afterwards. But I think, as I say, the thing that does make a real difference today is when you look around the world, and you can see this in countries like ours, but also out in the Middle East region, the difference today, the fundamental political difference, is less to do with the traditional left-right politics, as it is, because most people know what makes an effective economy today and so on. It is to do with whether countries are open, whether they're tolerant, whether they embrace people of different views and different faiths, or whether they're closed societies. And I think the future, this is not a Western position, I think the future for our world is in countries opening up to the outside world.
So, summing up, what would you say? You've got anything, obviously, from 1 day to 8 months to go. That's the sort of maximum, going back to what you said about the TUC Congress. What would you most like to achieve in that time? A lot of the aims for the Middle East will obviously take many years longer, but what would you most like to achieve in the remaining months?
Well, I think apart from Iraq and Afghanistan, where it's important to support the process of democracy, the most important thing for me is progress in Israel and Palestine. That is the thing I believe would have not just greater practical significance, most of all obviously for people in Israel and Palestine, but greater symbolic importance. Nothing would have a greater symbolic importance than that. It would send a signal to the whole of the world that this was not a battle between Westerners or Christians and Muslims, but it was a battle between all those who believe in tolerance, in living together, in harmony, in a non-sectarian future against those who want to divide us.
One of the problems there, though, is the perception that you and America are not unbiased in this situation.
Absolutely.
Everyone in the Arab world thinks that you're on the side of Israel, and somehow that's got to be dispelled.
Yeah, but you know what would help dispel it is people would understand that I am a strong supporter of Israel. I believe that Israel should have the right to exist, right? But I also believe that we need a Palestinian state, an independent, viable, democratic Palestinian state living alongside Israel. Now, the only way you're going to get there is not if we suddenly start distancing ourselves from Israel, because Israel's got to be part of this solution. The only way we're going to get there, as we tried to do here in respect of Northern Ireland, is to bring people together, to set out a common way forward and then work at it day in, day out until we get there. And the interesting thing about the Middle East at the moment, if you see King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia's initiative, for example, if you look at what other leaders in the region are talking about in Egypt and Jordan and so on, everybody wants the same thing now. Everybody wants that two-state solution. So now that you've got that common basis of agreement as to the way forward, the rest of it requires energy and determination and a relentless focus on getting this done because of its importance, not just to Israel and Palestine and not just to the Middle East, but to the world.
Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed.